in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options. And, you know, I one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are endeavoring to do. I want us as a Republican Party to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I want us to support fertility treatments. I want us to make it easier for moms to afford to have babies. I want it to make it easier for young families to afford a home so they can afford a place to raise that family. And I think there's so much that we can do on the public policy front just to give women more options. Now, of course, Donald Trump has been very clear that on the abortion policy specifically, that we have a big country and it's diverse. And California has a different viewpoint on this than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona. And the proper way to handle this, as messy as democracy sometimes is to let voters make these decisions, let the individual states make their abortion policy. And I think that's what makes the most sense in a very big, a very diverse, and let's be honest, sometimes a very, very messy and divided.
Before I respond to this video, I want to take a second to acknowledge that it's quite difficult to pin down the abortion position of Donald Trump and JD Vance because it seems to be ever changing. But in this clip from a couple months before the presidential election, JD Vance talks with another political opponent here in his debate. He's answering these questions about abortion, and he says a lot of different statements, right? So we hear a story about this friend who we're told needs an abortion. We hear ways he claims that he's supporting life. And then we hear abortion is so complicated that we absolutely cannot pass laws at a federal level. We're just going to let each state choose. I'd like to take a second to respond to each of those three. So first of all, we have this story of a friend who needs an abortion. Now, my heart goes out to this person because it can be so scary to face an unplanned pregnancy when you're in a position in life where you just didn't see yourself becoming a parent. But the truth of it is always wrong to kill an innocent human being, even in a difficult circumstance. So my heart goes out to JD Vance's friend who was watching this debate, who heard him share her story on live television. And my heart hurts for her because I wish that she had been connected to resources and she had known that rather if she chose to parent or chose to raise her own child, all the resources were there for either, and it wouldn't have ruined her life not to kill her child through abortion. That's a lie from Planned Parenthood and other abortion giants. They want women to believe the disempowering lie that without the ability to kill kids, women will be stuck in a state of poverty or bad mental health or have, stagnant careers or things like that. And none of it's true. But it's part of how they sell abortions is to convince women that without abortion, you will be stuck in poverty and you'll be stuck in a bad situation. And so I wish JD Vance would adjust his compassion there, because we should be having compassion for an unborn child who was murdered, violently killed. Maybe they had their, skull crushed, or they had their limbs cut off, or they had their body poisoned. They were killed somehow, and it was violent, and it was a human rights atrocity. It was an abuse against this human being who deserved protection. And instead of having any compassion for that little human, JD Vance doesn't say one word about, I feel sad for that baby, or I feel sad for that child. He's only saying, oh, I just feel sad for my friend. Can't we feel sad for both? Because the mother was harmed by abortion, because abortion hurts every person in its wake, but also this precious child was literally ripped apart violently, most likely, depending on the abortion procedure, but no matter what, had their life taken from them in an unjust manner. Why didn't he express even the slightest bit of compassion for that child? That's extremely misguided. And he might be trying to say, I'm personally pro-life. It's not showing here at all. He is not showing any compassion or emotion or sense of the wrong that was done against this child in this video. And I'm not saying that he never has at other times, or that he couldn't change his mind in the future and understand. You don't get to be personally pro-life, right? That's just, it's like saying I'm personally against slavery, but I don't care if my neighbor owns a slave. What kind of belief is that? If you don't act on behalf of those who are oppressed and you just say, well, it's okay that this person was oppressed and killed, because I would personally not do that myself, but it's okay that they did. That is such a apathetic position, and it does nothing to help protect vulnerable babies from harm. Kind of the next place JD Vance goes in this video is he's like, let me show you how holistically pro-life I am. Here's the thing. Him talking about fertility treatments, IVF is actually known to cause more death to embryos than elective abortion actually does. So the fact that he thinks he's so pro-family by supporting fertility treatments, like, no, I'm gonna take a moment to acknowledge, if you're watching this and you are someone who is conceived through IVF, I'm so happy you're alive. I'm so grateful for your life, and you are a beautiful and amazing blessing. But the process you went through to be conceived and born is something that can be very eugenic, where they grade the embryos, grade A, grade B, grade C, and they say, oh, you should only implant your grade A ones, and then we can throw grades B and C in the garbage because they're not likely to survive. So many embryos die completely unnecessarily because of the unethical practices involved in IVF. And then some of these other things JD Vance is saying, kind of besides this IVF conversation, he's going into like, oh, well, look, we're gonna make it easier to buy a house, and that's great, but if you can't even pass a law to protect a preborn child from violence, why do you think you're pro-life for trying to make houses more affordable? I support policies that make it easier for families to thrive, but you are not off the hook for saying we don't need pro-life legislation. Like, that is so unethical. A politician who says, hey, I value life, but we should not be passing federal legislation, like, that is just cowardice. Now, on to these statements about, well, California's got one view of abortion, and, whatever he said, Tennessee has another view, or whichever state he used as an example. This is not an issue that's about preferences. When we talk about choices that are appropriate for voters to make, or that are okay for us to differ on, there might be some things when it comes to the law where it's like, yeah, that totally doesn't have to be applied all across the states and even all across individuals. Like, for example, like, not applying to legislation necessarily, but thinking about our own lives. Like, I have the choice if I want to have a drink of coffee, or if I want water, or if I want some tea. It doesn't matter. I can have whatever, and that doesn't hurt anybody for me to choose coffee or a latte. Who cares? I didn't hurt anyone. That's a choice. The preborn is a child. This is not about choice, and this is not about unique situations in different states, because either the unborn are human or they're not. And if the preborn are human, which we know that they are because they have two human parents are reproducing a human offspring, that human being, according to embryology, distinct, living, and whole human, right there at fertilization, that individual is worthy of protection from violence. But instead of acknowledging that over 3,000 abortions are occurring each day, JD Vance is just like, yeah, we'll just let California be California, we'll let Tennessee be Tennessee. That is a profoundly unjust position, and God will hold politicians accountable who have the power to pass laws to protect babies from violence, and they don't do so. You don't get off the hook. You don't get to do unjust things like that. Now, if you were to ask President Trump today and Vice President JD Vance what their future plans are on the abortion issue, I hope that they've changed. I hope that they would say, like, wow, that was really misguided of us to be promoting these talking lines of like, oh yeah, like, we're pro-life because we want to make houses more affordable. No, being pro-life in a political sense means you have to prioritize the ending of abortion. You have to prioritize passing laws that protect children from violence. And I do not see that in this video, but I am praying for the leaders of our country to have a shift in their perspective, to see that every unborn child is worthy of life and they're worthy of laws that protect them, just like we have as the born. This is not extreme. This isn't some really radical advanced ethics, like some crazy people sit there and like look in these textbooks and somehow they come up with this crazy, position. No, this is very, very basic. We're just saying, like, yeah, we don't kill born humans, like we have laws against homicide against them. We should also have laws against homicide against preborn kids. It's not a crazy leap of conscience. It's just basic understanding of biology, of a good and healthy form of philosophy of saying that every human being is also a human person, and that starts at fertilization, and they deserve to be safe from violence. So it is my hope and prayer for transformation on both the part of Trump and JD Vance to see that we need pro-life laws, and we need every preborn child to be safe from abortion, which is killing kids 3,000 times a day in our country. This is the greatest crisis we're facing.